Salvete omnes! Mihi nomen est Radulfus, et hodie de itineris Romanis dicam. So, as I just said, we'll be having a look at travel across the Roman Empire today. As you can see in this map, there were many different routes across the Roman Empire, land routes and sea routes. So the two main types of travel were by road and were by boat. However, the roads were much preferred over sea travel as they were more comfortable and a lot safer. But I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so the Appian Way, the Via Appia in Latin, was the first major road across Italy, and it was considered to be the queen of roads. It was built by Appius Claudius in 321 BC, and it stretched from Rome all the way to Brundisium, but was extended a few times. The Roman Empire wanted a network of major solid roads to be spread all throughout their vicinity so that it could allow the legions to travel quickly across the empire, and also metaphorically for the civilization to move quicker. The Roman roads were very famous for their straightness, as seen in this photo, and that their straightness relies on the designing process of the roads. And in order to set out the course for a section of the road, the surveyors would take sightings from two different high places, or if it was forested or flatter country, they would light fires, and the smoke served as a guide to the surveyors. As I said before, the roads were very well known for their straightness, as it took a long time for them to be designed. And so we'll talk about how the roads were actually placed down. So once the course of the road was marked out, a meter deep trench would be dug, as seen by the photo on the left. Okay, so first, after they would dig the trench, they would beat the earth on the bottom hard, so then it would be flat, and then they would cram large stones into the bottom. This would act as a strong base for the road. They would then place down a layer of pebbles to fill the holes between the large stones, the cracks, and sometimes they bounded this together with cement, which you can see in the right image. After this, they would place sand above the pebbles, and then the upper layer, which consisted of stone, gravel, or small flints, whichever was locally available and ready to be used. The surface of the road was given a fairly steep camber to assist the drainage, and so the road was higher in the middle than at the sides, and so the water would flow out, and so it wouldn't so much make big puddles in the middle. So yeah, this would allow for the water to run off into the ditches dug at both sides. Sometimes the road builders would build an embankment, agere in Latin, when the road had to be raised above a marsh or something unstable like that. Roman roads were built to last, and it took a long time to do so. And so there are a few different methods of road travel. One could walk, ride a horse or a mule, ride in a wheeled vehicle, or by the litter. And the most common wheeled vehicle was the four-wheeled rider, as seen in this photo here. As you can see, it's a carriage with four wheels, usually pulled by two horses. However, this was not very fast at all because of all the weight of the carriage. However, it was good for carrying quite a few people with different goods, so it was used very much for shipping. Another wheeled vehicle was the Cisium, and there was a light two-wheeled cart which was drawn by two horses. As you can see here, it had like wooden poles pretty much holding it upright to the horses so then it wouldn't fall over. However, this was not very comfortable, this mode of travel, but it was much quicker than the rider. Another way of travel was by the litter, lectica in Latin, and it was probably the most comfortable way of travel. Pretty much what the litter was a portable couch with curtains, and it was carried by slaves, as seen by these two photos. So what would pretty much happen would be if a master, like the guy sitting on the couch, if he wanted to go across town just a small distance for like business needs, to go see his client or just to discuss affairs with partners, he would get his slaves to carry him. So there were 4 slaves carrying the litter. Sometimes a little bit more if it was a bigger litter, but these ones here are rather small. The master would want to do this, so then he would be more relaxed as it was a lot more comfortable. But he would also avoid getting grotty and dirty in all of the streets of the towns, which would have been, covered with mud or, feces or whatever like that. So it would save him getting dirty. And as I said before, this was only for very short trips, as it was quite slow. It was slower than walking pace. The straps of the curtains were detachable and were often used to beat incompetent bearers. So the slaves, if they were, mucking up or not carrying their weight. And the lectici were even used as ambulances because of how stable they were. However, this, as I said before, this was very uncommon, as it was only for the masters who had slaves. Now, talking about accommodation. So if you wanted to go for a trip across Italy, say on the Via Appia, for example, there were some hotels along the main routes, as Horace easily found one in Aricia. But there were a few problems with hotels along the main routes, as the hotel keepers were usually quite grasping, and they were trying to rip you off as much as you can. So sometimes it would be rather dodgy in some of these hotels, but most of the time it was alright. However, if you were a nobleman or quite rich, as Horace started to become, you might have a friend of yours who would live close to the main road, and he might even invite you to stay the night at his place and have dinner. So it was very dependent on who you knew. So now we'll talk a little bit about sea voyage. Now, land travel did have its issues, like time and like how comfortable it was, but it was definitely preferred over sea travel, and that was because sea travel was very dangerous sometimes, as seen by this overly dramatic image here. For most ships, it was only safe to sail between March and November due to the vigorous weather conditions of the winter months. And so most people just avoid traveling by sea. So if one wanted to get on a ship and to go somewhere, they would pretty much go to a harbour and they would look around for any ship that was sailing to their destination. This was not ideal, however, as sometimes if there was not enough cabin space beneath the deck, the travellers would just have to sleep on the deck in the elements, so that was not desirable most of the time. And as you can see by this map, this is the port built by Claudius. Well, it's a map of it, and you can see by the Latin at the top, Roman port constructed by Emperor Claudius. So that's a great source. And as you can see, they had the breakwalls to stop the waves coming into the harbour, just to keep the boats safe. And they had and even like another port like further in, which is the hexagonal port, which would be for like larger ships, or like the emperor's ships that they would want to keep a bit safer from the weather. And sometimes the sailors, they would have to wait for suitable winds, like favourable winds, secundus ventus, before they would set sail. And but once they did set sail in these favourable winds, the ships could go extremely fast once they were out in the sea, between 100 and 120 miles a day. And because of this speed, Octavian used to like sea travel quite a bit, as it was so fast. Now, we're going to have compare the speed of travel then in the Roman Empire and now. So, when the invention of the steam engine was like introduced to Italy, it did not really change the speeds much of travel between the Roman times and then, mainly because of, it took a little bit while for trains to for train networks to be built across the country, and also that they had to develop them a bit more. One could not really travel on land no faster than a horse, as in the Roman Empire were much better than those like the grotty roads in Victorian times, as seen in this photo. That they were much more narrow, and they were usually like filled with like robbers and criminals. However, after quite a bit of time, the time to travel distances across Italy had significantly dropped, and this was because of the steam engine had developed more, and trains became common across Italy, something that they obviously did not have in Roman times. And now you could travel 340 miles in a day instead of in 2 weeks, like Horace did going to Brundisium. And so it took Cicero about a day and 2 nights to sail from Corfu in Greece to Brundisium. He probably would have taken a ship similar to the sailing boat on the left, and it was seen as pretty quick back in the Roman times, as it could travel up to around 120 miles a day. However, this was like greatly improved upon, as nowadays it only takes 3 hours to complete the journey on the hydrofoil, as seen on the right. It also took Cicero about 3 months to get from Rome to Kilikia in Turkey. Now, this journey today might only take 2 or 3 days by boat or car, or if one takes an aeroplane, just a few hours. Thank you for listening to this explanation, and good luck